Every day I tried to please my husband, but he always seemed dissatisfied, and nothing ever came of it. My mother-in-law would taunt me about being childless. Fed up, I decided to do something that will leave you stunned. By the way, if you liked our previous video, type yes in the comments and subscribe to our channel. I stood in front of the mirror dressed up and staring at my reflection. Just a short while ago, I had arrived at my in-laws' house after my wedding ceremony. My husband had given me a gift for my first glance, then left the room, saying he would return in a little while. I thought, why not change into something special for him? He had already seen me in my bridal dress, complimented me, and given me the gift. Now I wanted to do something extraordinary. I quickly opened my wardrobe to check my belongings and found that beautiful nightgown I'd ordered online specifically for this night. Holding it in my hands, I went to the bathroom to change. After slipping into the nightgown, I left my hair loose. I had already washed off my makeup, so I reapplied my red lipstick and sprayed my perfume generously. I glanced at myself in the mirror one last time and couldn't help but smile. I looked stunning, radiant. I had no shortage of admirers, but I longed for my husband to admire me more than anyone else. I wanted him to be so captivated by my beauty and love that he couldn't see anything else. I was confident that tonight would be magical, that he wouldn't be able to look away, and I wouldn't let him go so easily. I had already learned about married life and the relationship between a man and a woman 2 nights before my wedding. As a result, my heart raced, anticipation sending sparks through my entire being. A married friend of mine had explained everything in great detail, and that's why I felt fully prepared. I was determined that tonight I would charm Zawar so completely that he'd be under my spell forever. My friend had told me, if you win him over on the first night, he'll be your devoted companion for life. That was my goal. Fully prepared, I stepped out of the bathroom and approached the bed, only to find my husband lying there. He was turned away, his face to the other side. I hadn't even noticed when he came back and lay down. Quietly, I approached, humming softly. When I saw him sound asleep, a wave of frustration washed over me. How could he sleep on such a special night? I had been eagerly preparing for him, only to find him asleep before I even had the chance to make my move. Whispering softly, I began to toy with the buttons on his kurta. Pressing my thumb lightly against his lips, I startled him awake. He sat up abruptly, looking at me with half-closed eyes. For a moment, he gazed at me from head to toe. Then a faint smile played on his lips. I thought he would pull me into his arms right then, shower me with love, and surrender himself completely. But that didn't happen. Instead, he leaned back against the headboard, his eyes scanning me, and said, "You really are very beautiful." My smile faltered. At that moment, I didn't want empty compliments. I wanted to lose myself in his passionate embrace. Zawar's next words left me stunned. He said, "Mina, I'm really exhausted and I just want to sleep. You must be tired from all the wedding festivities too, so just relax and get some rest." Without waiting for a reply, he turned over, closed his eyes, and left me with a sinking feeling in my chest. Summoning all the courage I had, I quietly asked, "Zawar, are you really going to sleep now?" He opened his eyes, looked at me in surprise, and said, "What do you think? Do you think I'm joking?" I just stared at him in disbelief. Then in a slightly firmer tone, he continued, "I'm not kidding. I'm genuinely exhausted. I handled all the arrangements, everything from the food to the wedding hall. Tomorrow morning, I have to get up and start preparing for the walima. You women just go to the salon, get your makeup done, and sit looking pretty. We men have to deal with everything else. So now let me rest, and you should rest too." Zawar closed his eyes again, and I quietly walked back to my side of the bed. His demeanor left me so shaken that I couldn't muster the courage to speak further. Slowly, tears began to spill from my eyes, soaking into the pillow. The first thought that entered my mind was that maybe he didn't like me, or perhaps there was someone else in his life, someone he cared for more than me. The mere possibility was enough to break my heart, and I couldn't hold back the tears. Hours later, when the weight on my chest finally eased, I got up, went to the bathroom, and changed out of the outfit I had so carefully prepared for this night. The person it was meant for was already snoring, filling the room with the sound of his peaceful sleep. I put on a simple cotton outfit and returned to bed. I, too, was exhausted, and before long I fell into a troubled sleep. The next morning when I visited my family, I couldn't bring myself to meet my friends' eyes. They were married women, most of them, and they teased me mercilessly. They bombarded me with playful questions about how the wedding night had gone, asking how Zawar had made the first move, or if I had even wanted to leave his side and come back to my family. They joked about whether the morning had come too early and then burst out laughing. They meant no harm. These were my closest friends, just teasing me as they always had. But as they laughed, I felt no blush of embarrassment, only shame. Nothing had happened between us that night, and I couldn't admit it to anyone. I knew the bond between husband and wife was supposed to be private, a secret not to be shared. Yet my face must have betrayed me. When the others finally left, my best friend Naima lingered. Seeing my pale expression, she softly asked, "Mina, what's wrong? You don't seem happy. You don't have the glow that a new bride should. If there's something bothering you, you can tell me." Naima and I had been close since childhood. She was married herself, and she had always known my secrets, offering thoughtful advice every time. This time, I couldn't hold it in. I told her the truth. Zawar hadn't even touched me. Her reaction was immediate. She jumped up in surprise. "No matter how tired a man is," she said, "he doesn't just fall asleep like that on his wedding night. Could it be that Zawar isn't happy with the marriage?" Naima voiced the same question that had already planted seeds of doubt in my heart. At her words, I suddenly broke down and started crying uncontrollably. "I don't know," I sobbed. "I really don't know, but my heart feels utterly shattered. You know how I always had so many suitors, so many men vying for my attention, and yet I chose to honor my parents' wishes and agreed to this arranged marriage. And look what it's brought me. Maybe if I'd married someone of my own choosing, at least he would have valued me, treated me differently." My voice cracked as I finished, the hurt cutting deeply. Naima quickly embraced me, patting my back reassuringly. "Don't lose hope so soon," she said gently. "Maybe he really is just exhausted. He's the only son after all. All the responsibilities must have fallen on his shoulders. And who knows how long it's been since he last got any proper rest. Now that the wedding's over, maybe he just finally got the chance to sleep peacefully. Give it a day or two. He'll come around on his own. Some men act aloof at first just to assert their dominance. But don't worry, you're so beautiful, so charming. If not today, then tomorrow he'll be completely taken by you." Her words comforted me slightly, and I tried to calm myself. The walima ceremony passed without incident. Once again, Zawar busied himself with the arrangements, mingling with guests and overseeing the food. There was barely a moment where we could exchange a proper glance, let alone share a meaningful conversation. When we finally returned home, I hoped we'd have a chance to connect. But as soon as we entered our room, Zawar headed straight to change his clothes. I sat on the bed waiting, thinking that this would be the moment he'd finally look at me, compliment me, and see me for who I was. When he came back, he barely gave me a passing glance. Instead, he said, "Are you just going to sit there like a statue? Go change and lie down." With that, he climbed into bed and turned away. The bitterness in my chest was almost unbearable, but I quietly did as he asked, changing out of my dress and slipping into something more comfortable. When I came back and sat on the bed, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Zawar," I began tentatively, "are you upset with me?" He shook his head. "No," he said. "Then why are you so distant?" I pressed gently. "Last night you just went to sleep like that, and tonight seems no different. What's wrong?" Zawar turned to look at me, and his expression was something I hadn't seen before, an odd mixture of annoyance and surprise. "Why are you so eager?" he asked bluntly. "I thought girls were supposed to be shy, but since yesterday I've noticed how restless you are. That's not how respectable girls act." His words stung like a slap to the face. I felt my cheeks flush hot with shame, even though I hadn't said anything wrong. I was his lawful wife. I had every right to want his attention, his love, his companionship. And yet his harsh words silenced me. I lowered my gaze, unable to meet his eyes anymore. He came closer, wrapping me in his arms. but the longing I had felt was gone. His earlier remarks had crushed it entirely. I allowed him to hold me, but it felt empty, mechanical. He kissed me half-heartedly, and then soon after, fell asleep. I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, my heart churning with confusion and sorrow. Even as he held me, it felt as though he were miles away. He didn't see me, didn't connect with me in the way I had hoped. It felt like he was fulfilling an obligation rather than sharing a moment of intimacy. When he finally drifted off into deep sleep, I lay awake consumed by a storm of thoughts. What was it that made him so distant? Was it something about me? Was there someone else in his life? Or was there something about him that he couldn't or wouldn't share? The questions tore at me, but I couldn't ask him. I didn't have the courage to bring it up again after the way he'd spoken to me. His tone was so sharp, so dismissive, that the mere thought of confronting him left me paralyzed with fear. All night I lay there, burning with frustration and sadness, until the first light of dawn finally appeared. I never imagined that the loneliness I felt would stretch out for so long. At first I consoled myself, believing that time would bring change, that things would eventually get better. But what I thought was hope turned out to be nothing more than wishful thinking. Nothing improved. In fact, things only became worse. The emptiness I felt in my marriage began to grow, and soon I was seeking something, anything, to fill that void. People knew me as Mina. I had always been a lively, attractive girl, surrounded by admirers throughout my school and college years. My beauty and charm were well known. There was never a shortage of suitors, and a few were quite persistent. One cousin from my aunt's side had even proposed, but my parents were quick to reject him. They firmly believed that family marriages only led to disputes. Though I liked him, he was kind, educated, and had a good job. My mother's decision was final. She reasoned that family ties should remain untangled by marriage, and I reluctantly agreed. I chose to remain silent, letting my cousin's hopes fade. Eventually, I set aside any personal feelings and decided to trust my parents' judgment. After all, I'd always believed that their choice would be best. That's how Zawar's proposal entered my life. My father's distant acquaintance, through a mutual connection, had seen me at a wedding. Just days after that event, Zawar's family sent their proposal. My father was impressed. Zawar was the only son, well off, with a large home, servants, and a respectable income. In my father's eyes, this was a union that would secure my future. He thought I would live like a queen in their household. After doing some inquiries, everyone seemed to have good things to say about Zawar, so my father made the match. I was only 19 when I married Zawar. Like any young bride, I had my dreams. I had imagined a loving, fulfilling marriage where my husband would be both my partner and my support. Even as I prepared for my wedding, I carried those dreams with me. But the night before my departure to my in-laws' home, something unexpected happened. My cousin, the one whose proposal my parents had declined, came to see me. He pulled me aside, his voice low and hesitant. "Mina, are you sure about this?" he asked. "This guy, your father shouldn't have agreed to him. He's not right for you." I felt a pang of irritation. Was he jealous? I dismissed his concerns, brushing him off. "My wedding is tomorrow and you're bringing this up now? Please stop." But he persisted. "If I'd known about this guy earlier, I would have done everything I could to prevent this marriage. I'd have warned you sooner. Mina, I'm telling you, you're making a mistake." His words unsettled me, but I pushed them aside. "You're just bitter. Please leave before someone sees you. I don't want to hear anymore." Before walking away, he gave me one last look. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. "One day, you'll see that I was right." I ignored him. Instead, I focused on the excitement of my wedding day and the new chapter ahead of me. Soon, I was married and moved into Zawar's home. The household was small, just my mother-in-law, Zawar, and me. My mother-in-law welcomed me warmly and treated me with affection. On the second day, she handed me the house keys, symbolizing my new role in the family. I now had control over a spacious home, servants, and a life of comfort. Everything seemed perfect on the surface, but beneath that surface, something was missing. Zawar's love, his warmth, and the emotional connection I longed for simply weren't there. Despite all the material comfort, I felt a growing emptiness. He was distant, detached. I had hoped that time would bring us closer, but the days turned into weeks, and the gap between us remained. I began to recall my cousin's warning. Was he right all along? Had I ignored the truth because I wanted to believe in my father's decision? Every day that passed, Zawar's indifference cut deeper. He fulfilled his role as a provider, but emotionally, he was absent. He treated me more like a housekeeper than a wife. There was no companionship, no partnership, just a cold, transactional relationship that left me feeling isolated. I started to lose myself in the routine of running the household, but that routine couldn't fill the void in my heart. Every time I tried to reach out to Zawar, I was met with the same aloofness. He would dismiss my concerns, brushing them off as unimportant. I started questioning myself. Was I too demanding? Was I expecting too much? But deep down, I knew that my expectations were not unreasonable. I wasn't asking for grand gestures. I only wanted a simple connection, a sign that he cared. Despite my attempts to keep myself busy, the loneliness became overwhelming. I found myself remembering the life I had before my marriage. I thought about the boys who used to admire me, the cousin who had been so willing to fight for me. I wondered if I had made the wrong choice. Yet I told myself that I had done the right thing, honoring my parents' wishes, trusting their decision. But now, as the days stretched into weeks and the weeks into months, I began to see the cracks in that decision. I wanted to hope that things would get better, but Zawar gave me no reason to believe they would. He remained as distant as ever, and I found myself trapped in a marriage that offered no love, no connection, and no joy. All I had was the memory of my cousin's words, echoing in my mind. One day you'll regret this. And now, that day had come. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but there was clearly something wrong with Zawar. Slowly, I began to realize that even though he was physically present, he was never truly with me. He couldn't make me happy. He never paid me any attention. I had no idea where his focus was, but it was certainly not on me. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, all passing by in a haze of unspoken frustrations and quiet suffering. Out of shyness and fear of causing conflict, I never shared my feelings with my parents, and I never confronted Zawar about his indifference. Then one day, my mother-in-law broke the silence with a comment that left me shaken. "It's been nearly 6 months since your wedding," she said matter-of-factly. "When are you going to give us some good news? I've been longing for a grandson. A child would bring joy to this house, and I had you married to Zawar so I could see my grandchildren soon. But it seems you have no intention of giving me that happiness." Her words hit me like a slap. For a fleeting moment, I wanted to retort, "How can I give you good news when your son hasn't shown me that kind of love, when he barely acknowledges me?" But as always, my modesty and sense of propriety silenced me. I said nothing, and from then on, my mother-in-law began her relentless taunts. "You must have some flaw," she would say. "Otherwise, why haven't you conceived yet?" Her comments grew harsher, and her accusations more cutting as the months went by. By the 7th or 8th month, my patience finally wore thin. I could no longer endure Zawar's coldness, nor could I bear my mother-in-law's biting remarks. I would sit alone, quietly crying for hours. A heavy loneliness settled over me, and I found myself longing for someone, anyone, who would give me the attention and care I was missing. Someone who would see me, understand me, and make me feel valued. It was during this time that someone new entered my life. I had gone to stay at my parents' house for a short while. One afternoon there was a knock at the door. I opened it and saw a young man standing there asking for directions. As he spoke, his eyes lit up in a way that caught me off guard. I gave him the information he needed, and he left. But the next day, he was back again, standing at our door. I was surprised to see him and asked, "Didn't I already tell you that address isn't in this neighborhood?" He smiled softly and replied, "I'm not here for the address. I just wanted to see you." The third day, he showed up once more, and this time, before leaving, he slipped a small piece of paper into my hand. A phone number. If it had been any other time, I might have scolded him, or perhaps even slapped him. But my loneliness, my sense of abandonment, had already taken its toll. I held onto that slip of paper, clutching it tightly in my hand. When I returned to my in-laws' house that night, Zawar's usual indifference was waiting for me. I had been away for 4 days, and yet he barely acknowledged my presence. It was as if I didn't exist to him. That was the moment I decided to keep the phone number, to not throw it away. The next morning, when Zawar left for work, I took a deep breath and dialed it. He answered, his voice filled with warmth and excitement. He told me he had fallen for me the moment he saw me, that he had felt an instant connection. I listened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, someone was speaking to me with affection. Slowly, our conversations became more frequent. Within a few days, he started asking to meet in person. Although I was hesitant, after all, I had never done anything like this before, there was a part of me that wanted to say yes. The truth was, ever since this man, Shahrukh, had come into my life, Zawar's coldness no longer bothered me as much. In fact, I found myself wishing he would fall asleep quickly so I could spend time on the phone with Shahrukh. Eventually, Shahrukh suggested meeting at a local hotel. I resisted at first, but the longing for attention, for care, and for someone who genuinely seemed to want to make me happy wore down my defenses. I convinced myself that this wasn't wrong, that this was just a chance to talk, to be seen. When the day came, Zawar had left for work, and my mother-in-law didn't pay much attention to my comings and goings. I made my way to the hotel, feeling a mix of nervous excitement and a lingering sense of guilt. As I walked in and saw Shahrukh waiting for me, I realized how far I had come from the life I had envisioned for myself. In that moment, I wanted to feel loved. I wanted to feel important. Shahrukh, with his warm smile and kind words, was offering me what I had been missing for so long. That's why I ended up going to the hotel. I walked directly into the room where Shahrukh was waiting. As soon as I entered, a smile spread across his face. He stepped forward, wrapped his arms around me, and guided me to sit on the bed. A wave of nervousness swept over me. I felt both shy and unsure. He sat down beside me, his presence overwhelming, and for a brief moment, I wondered how things had reached this point. But before we could say a word to each other, before he could express his affection or intentions, the door to the room suddenly opened. There he was, my husband, Zawar, standing in the doorway. His expression was a mixture of disbelief and disgust. His first words came out laced with venom. "This is exactly what I expected from you. I knew from the very beginning that you were a woman of poor character. And look, I caught you red-handed." Seeing Zawar standing there, my heart dropped. I panicked, immediately standing up and moving toward him. "Zawar, please listen to me," I pleaded, trying desperately to explain, but he didn't let me get another word out. He slapped me hard across the face and spat out words that burned. "I don't need to hear anything from you. On the day of our wedding, your cousin told me what kind of a woman you are. He showed me pictures, proof that you've been involved with numerous men before our marriage. At first, I couldn't believe it, but now you've proven him right. You truly are of poor character." His words tore through me. He added, "That's why I couldn't bring myself to get close to you. Every time I tried, I felt sick, knowing what you really are." Zawar left without another word, leaving me standing there, stunned and humiliated. It felt like my entire world had collapsed. I turned to look at Shahrukh, hoping he would at least be remorseful. Instead, he smiled. "Your husband sent me," he said coldly. "He wanted to know your true character, and you failed." At that moment, I felt the ground beneath me disappear. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I ran after Zawar, desperate to explain, desperate for him to understand that this was all a manipulation. But how could I convince him? He had seen me with his own eyes, in a room with another man. Words felt meaningless. Still, I told him everything. How it had been my cousin Faizan's doing. How he had set everything up. Zawar didn't believe me at first. He looked at me with doubt, his faith in me completely shattered. I had no choice but to call my parents. In tears, I confessed everything to them, feeling utterly humiliated. My mother then spoke with my aunt, who vouched for me and revealed that her son, Faizan, had lied. Slowly, Zawar began to accept the truth, that this had all been a malicious scheme by my cousin. Although Zawar eventually came to believe in my innocence, Our relationship was never the same. Something had broken between us that could never be repaired. I could never forget how quickly he had doubted me, how easily he had judged me without even asking me directly. He had taken someone else's words as truth and treated me as if I were nothing. Now I'm a mother. I have a son who brings me joy, but when it comes to Zawar, there's no love left. My feelings for him have vanished. Our marriage continues, but it feels more like an obligation than a partnership. I carry on because of my son, but I no longer look to Zawar for affection or companionship. I can't erase what he did. I can't forgive how he let someone else's lies dictate his treatment of me. Perhaps I made mistakes too. In a moment of weakness, I trusted someone I shouldn't have. I went to meet a man who was not my husband. That was wrong, and I take responsibility for that. But I also can't ignore the reality that I was driven to that point by a marriage that left me feeling abandoned and unseen. In the end, it was a combination of my own errors and the failings of those around me, the distrust, the manipulation, and the lack of communication that led to this painful chapter of my life.